a chained forest ranger, a pack of rogue K9s, and a betrayal deeper than the wilderness itself. What would you do if you woke up trapped in the freezing woods, bloodied, broken, and left for dead, only to see 5 battle-scarred German shepherds staring back at you? This is Ethan Carter's nightmare, until the dogs do the unthinkable. Kaiser, the alpha with a military past and a killer instinct, but why did he choose Ethan? Corruption. That goes all the way to the governor's office. Gunfights, betrayals, and a dog who hunts like a soldier. Comment below. Would you trust a dog like Kaiser with your life? Ever had a pet save you from danger? Tell us your story. Smash that like button. If you're hooked, subscribe. For more real-life hero dogs and heart-pounding survival tales, share this video with someone who believes dogs are more than pets, they're family. Warning. This story will leave you side-eyeing your own dog and wondering what they're truly capable of. The ancient pines of Blackwood Reserve stood like silent sentinels in the moonlit clearing, their snow-laden branches sagging under the weight of the winter storm. Ethan Carter's breath came in ragged, visible puffs as he struggled against the iron shackles cutting into his frost-bitten wrists. The former Special Forces operative turned park ranger had survived 3 tours overseas, only to find himself facing death in the very wilderness he'd sworn to protect. Blood from his temple wound had frozen into crimson icicles that clinked softly when he moved. 2 days. 2 days since the so-called survey team had revealed their true intentions at gunpoint. 2 days since they'd chained him to this tree when he refused to cooperate with their illegal operations. A sudden crunch of snow snapped Ethan's head up. His military-honed instincts screamed danger even as hypothermia clouded his thoughts. Through the swirling snow, 5 dark shapes materialized like ghosts from the tree line, German shepherds moving with purposeful precision. The lead dog, a massive male with a distinctive jagged scar running from forehead to muzzle, locked golden eyes with Ethan. There was an unsettling intelligence in that gaze, a calculating awareness that went beyond ordinary canine behavior. The scarred shepherd didn't bark or growl, but simply sat at attention like a soldier reporting for duty, snow collecting on his thick fur. As Ethan watched through fading consciousness, the other dogs deployed with military efficiency. One began digging at the frozen ground where the chains met the tree, another sniffed methodically along the shackles, while a third took up a defensive position facing the woods. The precision of their movements suggested training far beyond typical search and rescue dogs. When the largest dog suddenly threw back his head and unleashed a haunting howl that echoed through the mountains, Ethan's skin prickled with recognition. That wasn't just a noise, it was a tactical signal. Darkness crept at the edges of Ethan's vision as the cold finally overwhelmed him. His last conscious thought was of the scarred dog standing guard over him like a 4-legged centurion. Then the sharp crack of rifle fire split the night, followed by shouting voices and the snarl of the shepherds. As unconsciousness claimed him, Ethan's final sensation was of warm canine breath on his face and the weight of a protective body shielding him from danger. The gunshot still echoed in Ethan's skull when he next opened his eyes, though whether seconds or hours had passed, he couldn't tell. Blinking against the sterile white light of what appeared to be a medical facility, his dry throat couldn't form the questions screaming in his mind. A shadow moved at his bedside, not a doctor or nurse, but a wiry woman in a K9 unit jacket whose sharp green eyes missed nothing. "Welcome back, Ranger Carter," she said, her voice equal parts relief and grim determination. "I'm Captain Lena Hart. You've met my dogs." She nodded toward the doorway where the scarred shepherd sat watching intently. "Especially Kaiser here, who apparently decided you're worth breaking every protocol for." As Ethan struggled to process this, Hart's expression darkened. "But we've got bigger problems. The men who left you to die, they weren't just poachers." She held up a evidence bag containing a familiar insignia. And they're coming back to finish the job. Ethan Carter woke to the sterile sting of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. His body felt like it had been run through a wood chipper. Every muscle screamed in protest as he blinked against the fluorescent lights of the ranger station's infirmary. Bandages wrapped his wrists where the shackles had bitten deep, and his ribs throbbed with each breath. A shadow moved beside him. "Welcome back to the land of the living." The voice belonged to a woman in a K-9 unit jacket. Lena Hart, her name tag read. She was lean, her dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense braid, and her sharp green eyes missed nothing. At her hip stood the scarred German shepherd from the woods. "Kaiser," she called him. The dog's golden eyes locked onto Ethan's with unsettling focus, as if waiting for orders. Lena tossed a file onto the bedside table. "You're lucky Kaiser found you. He's not exactly a people dog," she smirked. "Retired military, failed bonding tests after his handler died overseas, but for some reason he decided you were worth breaking protocol for." Ethan reached out, fingers trembling, and Kaiser pressed his muzzle into his palm without hesitation. The dog's warmth was real, grounding. Then the door burst open. Sheriff Daniel Reeves strode in, his face unreadable. "Carter, good to see you breathing." His voice was too calm, his grip too firm when he shook Ethan's hand. "We've got your statement from the woods, but we need details. Who chained you up?" Ethan hesitated. Something about Reeves's posture, too stiff, too controlled, set off alarms in his head. "Masks, no names. They wanted access to the reserve, for something big." Reeves nodded, jotting notes. "Poachers, then," Lena cut in. "Poachers don't use military-grade restraints." She held up an evidence bag, the shackles from the tree, the lock still intact. "These are tactical issue, same kind used in Black Ops." The room went still. Reeves's jaw tightened. "We'll handle it. You focus on recovery." He turned to leave, but not before Ethan caught the flicker of his gaze toward Kaiser. Cold, calculating. The second the sheriff was gone, Lena leaned in. "He's lying." She lowered her voice. "Those men weren't just hunters. They had badges more under their jackets. And Reeves just ordered all K-9 patrols pulled from the north sector." Ethan's blood ran colder than the woods that nearly killed him. Outside, the wind howled like a warning. That night, the ranger station's generators failed. Ethan jolted awake to darkness, his ribs protesting as he sat up. Kaiser was already on his feet, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Through the window, flashlights cut through the black. Too many, moving too fast. Then the gunshots started. Glass shattered. Shouts erupted. Lena burst into the infirmary, her sidearm drawn. "We've got company!" Kaiser didn't wait. He lunged for the door, teeth bared. Ethan grabbed the fire axe from the wall. Whoever wanted him dead wasn't waiting for winter to finish the job. The gunshots cracked through the night like bones breaking. Ethan Carter hit the floor before his conscious mind registered the danger, his body moving on muscle memory alone. The ranger station had plunged into darkness. No lights, no radios, just the panicked shouts of deputies and the metallic scent of blood in the air. Kaiser stood rigid beside him, ears flat against his skull, a growl vibrating deep in his chest. Lena Hart pressed against the infirmary door, her Glock steady in both hands. "They cut the power first," she hissed. "This isn't some backwoods poacher crew. This is a damn assault." Ethan's fingers closed around the fire axe as shadows moved outside the window. Too many, too organized. The realization hit him like a bullet. They'd come back to finish what they started. Glass exploded inward. A masked figure lunged through, rifle raised. Kaiser moved like black lightning. The dog's 90-pound frame hit the intruder mid-chest, jaws locking around the man's forearm. The scream that followed was cut short as Lena's bullet found its mark. More figures surged from the hallway. Ethan swung the axe into the darkness, feeling it connect with something solid. A grunt of pain, the coppery tang of fresh blood. Then, a voice cut through the chaos. "Sheriff Reeves." "Stand down, Carter. You're making this worse." Ethan froze. The sheriff stood framed in the doorway, his service weapon drawn, but not pointed at the intruders. At him. Lena's breath hitched. "Daniel!" "What the hell?" Reeves's face twisted into something unrecognizable. "Should have died out there in the snow. Would have been cleaner." His finger whitened on the trigger. Kaiser launched. The impact sent the sheriff crashing into the wall. The gun fired wild, the bullet embedding in the ceiling as man and dog became a whirl of snarls and fists. Ethan moved to intervene, but a new sound stopped him cold. The click of a hammer cocking behind his head. "Don't." The voice was familiar. Deputy Ryan Cole, one of Reeves's most trusted men, pressed the barrel of his revolver against Ethan's skull. "We tried to do this quiet," Cole breathed, "but you just had to be the hero." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Too late. Cole's grip tightened. A single gunshot rang out. The gunshot left Ethan's ears ringing. But it wasn't his blood pooling on the floor, it was Cole's. The deputy collapsed, revealing Lena behind him, her smoking pistol steady despite the tremor in her hands. Kaiser still pinned Reeves to the ground, the sheriff's face a mask of rage and something darker. Fear. As the backup unit's headlights flooded the station through shattered windows, Ethan saw the truth in the stark light. Reeves's uniform bore the same mud-stained knees as the men who'd chained him in the woods, the same insignia on their hidden badges. But before Ethan could speak, Kaiser suddenly released Reeves and bolted for the door, his nose to the ground like he'd caught a scent. Lena's eyes met Ethan's. "He's found something." Outside in the storm, fresh tire tracks led north, toward the abandoned ranger outpost where this nightmare began, and deeper into the woods where the real secrets were buried. The storm had returned with a vengeance by the time Ethan and Lena reached the abandoned outpost, their boots sinking into knee-deep snow with every step. Kaiser moved ahead like a shadow, his nose tracing invisible patterns in the howling wind. The bullet graze on his flank had stopped bleeding, but the wound left his gait slightly uneven, a detail that made Ethan's jaw clench. The dog shouldn't be out here. But when they'd tried to leave him behind, Kaiser had nearly torn through a steel-reinforced kennel door. Some bonds, it seemed, ran deeper than pain. The outpost loomed ahead, its boarded-up windows like sightless eyes. What had once been a ranger station now leaned dangerously, its timbers groaning under decades of neglect. Yet fresh boot prints marred the snow around the entrance, and the heavy padlock on the door hung open, its chain freshly cut. Lena raised her sidearm. "They're still here." Kaiser's growl confirmed it, before the first gunshot shattered the night. The bullet whined past Ethan's ear as he dove behind a snowdrift. Muzzle flashes lit up the outpost's windows, 3, maybe 4 shooters. Lena returned fire, her shots precise even as snow and splintered wood rained down around them. Kaiser vanished into the blizzard's veil, his training overriding instinct. Military dogs didn't cower, they flanked. Ethan lunged for the outpost's side entrance, his ribs screaming with each movement. The door gave way with a kick, revealing a scene that froze his blood. Maps of the reserve covered the walls, marked with routes and dates. But it was the center table that held the truth. Stacks of forged permits, vials of black market animal tranquilizers, and a ledger with Reeves's signature on every page. A floorboard creaked behind him. Ethan turned just as a figure emerged from the shadows. Deputy Cole. Very much alive despite Lena's bullet, his face a grotesque mask of bandages and rage. The revolver in his hand shook, but at this range, he couldn't miss. "Should have bled out in those chains," Cole spat. Kaiser hit him from the side like a freight train. The gun went off as they crashed through a rotting wall, the bullet embedding in the ledger. Ethan scrambled after them, axe raised, but the fight was already over. Kaiser stood panting over Cole's unconscious form, blood dripping from his muzzle. Not his own. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Lena appeared in the doorway, her sleeve torn and bloody. "They're gone." Took a truck north toward... A metallic glint in the snow caught Ethan's eye. He knelt, brushing aside the powder to reveal a sheriff's badge, its edges crusted with frozen dirt, but the name engraved on it wasn't Reeves. It was Governor Harlan's. The badge burned in Ethan's palm like a live coal. Governor Harlan, the man who'd personally funded the reserve's expansion last year, the man Reeves reported to directly. Lena's radio crackled to life with a burst of static. "All units, ambush, Northridge." The transmission died, but not before Ethan heard the scream in the background, a sound he recognized. The same scream that had echoed through the woods the night he was chained to that tree. Kaiser's head snapped up, his ears pricked toward the sound. Somewhere in the storm, the real hunt was just beginning. And the trail led straight to the governor's mansion. The governor's mansion loomed through the storm like a gilded tomb, its wrought iron gates standing open in silent invitation. Ethan crouched in the shadow of the pines, the stolen badge digging into his palm. Beside him, Lena adjusted her binoculars, her breath fogging in the frozen air. No guards. No cars. That's not right. Kaiser pressed against Ethan's leg, his body tense. The dog hadn't made a sound since they'd found the governor's badge in the snow, his golden eyes fixed on the mansion's third-floor windows, where a single light burned. Ethan checked his weapon, only 3 rounds left. "They're expecting us." The front door creaked open before they reached the porch. A figure stood silhouetted against the grand foyer's chandelier. Governor Harlan himself, dressed in hunting tweed as if preparing for an afternoon shoot. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ranger Carter, I wondered when you'd come." The stench hit them first. Blood. Old and fresh. Then Ethan saw the trophies. Dozens of animal heads lined the walls, bears, wolves, mountain lions. But these weren't ordinary hunting prizes. Each wore a collar with a numbered tag, just like the research animals from the reserve's conservation program. The governor followed Ethan's gaze. Beautiful, aren't they? Much more challenging when they're trained to evade hunters. Lena's gun came up. "You turned protected species into game?" Harlan chuckled. "For the right price, men will hunt anything, even other men." He snapped his fingers. The shadows behind him moved, figures in tactical gear. Their rifles trained on Ethan's chest, but it was the chains in their hands that made Kaiser snarl. The same military-grade restraints from the woods. "Your dog first, I think," Harlan murmured. "My clients would pay millions for a hunt like that." Glass shattered above them. A gunshot rang out, but not from the governor's men. One of the tactical operatives crumpled, a dark stain spreading across his chest. Then another. Harlan's smile vanished as the mansion's windows exploded inward in a hail of gunfire. Someone else was here to kill them all. Ethan hit the marble floor as the chandelier came crashing down, dragging Kaiser beneath an overturned table. Lena returned fire toward the new attackers, but these weren't Harlan's men. Their uniforms bore no insignia, their faces hidden behind advanced tactical masks. Through the smoke and gunfire, Ethan caught a glimpse of the governor being dragged away by 2 figures, his prized hunting rifle abandoned on the blood-slicked floor. Kaiser suddenly stiffened, his nose twitching at something in the chaos. Before Ethan could stop him, the dog bolted after the governor's captors, not to attack, but to follow. The last thing Ethan saw before smoke swallowed the hallway was Kaiser disappearing into the mansion's depths, chasing a scent only he could detect. The real game had just begun. 6 months later, the first snow of winter dusted the rebuilt ranger station, settling over the scarred land like a promise of healing. Ethan Carter stood at the edge of the clearing, his breath fogging in the dawn air. The wounds had closed, the bullet graze on his shoulder, the knife slash across his ribs, but some marks would never fade, the ones you couldn't see. Behind him, Kaiser lay sprawled on the cabin's porch, his muzzle gone gray at the edges, the old scar over his eye a pale seam against his dark fur. The dog's ears twitched at the sound of approaching footsteps, but he didn't rise. He knew that gait. Lena Hart limped into view, her left leg still stiff from the gunshot that had nearly taken her knee. She held out a steaming mug. "You're up early." Ethan took the coffee, his fingers brushing the fresh ink on her wrist, a tiny, stylized dog paw beside the coordinates of the clearing where they'd found her brother's body, the governor's final victim. "Dreams," he said simply. She nodded. They all had them. The investigation had made headlines, then vanished from the news cycle. Too messy, too many powerful names involved. Governor Harlan was officially missing. The black market hunting ring was dismantled. The reserve's corrupt rangers were in prison. But the man in the tactical mask, the one who'd ordered the mansion attack, had never been found. Kaiser suddenly lifted his head, his nostrils flaring. A second later, Ethan heard it too. The crunch of tires on gravel. A black SUV rolled to a stop outside the station, its windows tinted, its plates obscured by mud. The door opened. A man stepped out, his face hidden beneath a parka hood. But the way he moved, like a soldier, like a ghost, sent Kaiser to his feet with a low, warning growl. Ethan's hand drifted toward his hip. The stranger didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he tossed a small object into the snow at Ethan's feet. A dog tag, not Kaiser's. His original handler's. The stranger didn't speak, didn't need to. The message was clear in the way his gaze lingered on Kaiser, in the way his gloved hand hovered near his coat. Not threatening, but offering. Ethan stared at the dog tag, the name etched there, one he hadn't heard in years. A name from the classified mission reports, from the blacked-out documents Lena had hacked. A name that shouldn't exist. Kaiser whined, low and uncertain, his body caught between Ethan and the stranger. Some bonds, it seemed, were older than loyalty.